The Iranian regime is killing its own citizens. But what is the British government going to do?
We asked the British-Iranian comic Omid Djalili whether he thinks the IRGC should be proscribed and whether the Prime Minister is being tough enough.
There is a feeling that it's better to, I don't want to say this, it's a very terrible thing, but the feeling is that people are at that point where they say it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. And I think we're looking at people who are on their knees, which is why we're seeing unprecedented amounts of bravery, courage, and actually organisation now. They're not going to stop. These demonstrations are not, I can tell you that right now, they're not going to stop.
I think one of the most striking scenes this historic weekend was at the UK Iranian embassy when a protester scaled up the wall, took down the Republic of Iran flag and waved the old flag of the Shah's Persia.
Yes, reaching the lion. Also just because of his spidey sense. I mean, he climbed up that building so quickly.
It's great to watch the police shouting at him impotently.
I know.
In America, he would have been shot. But in this country, I'm very pleased to say he got away with it.
But it was so determined and defiant, and it was quite extraordinary. And to be fair, even more extraordinary scenes have been playing out on the streets of Iran, where these protests are different in character, Tim, aren't they, to the ones that took place in 2019? Because they were quite sporadic and quite spread quite apart when you look at the map of Iran, whereas those maps that put the red dot up as to everywhere that a protest has been staged, it almost colours the whole country red. And the bravery of some of these people who are taking to the streets in the face of gunfire, and unfortunately the bodies have been piling up in the street, and there's been a rhetoric around the coverage or lack thereof by the BBC, and the silence of the so-called liberals who usually think nothing about taking to the streets in protest when it comes to persecuted protesters, young women shot in the back for trying to take a stand against the Ayatollah. Even though there's been a social media blackout, some of the videos that have filtered through, obviously some depicting hugely violent and disturbing scenes, others rather more uplifting, young girls doing gymnastics in the streets and dancing, young women taking off their hijabs and their robes, wanting to be free again, wanting to go back to that pre-1979 Persian sort of picture of mini-skirted elegance. But the question is whether this is different. Is it different this time? Because it feels like if it isn't now, then never.
The US-based human rights activist news agency says it has verified the deaths of at least 495 protesters and 48 security personnel, and I'm sure that those figures will turn out to have been too low. Because we're not in Iran, it's difficult to figure out what's happening in Iran. Has the Iranian state fully unleashed its security forces yet? One suspects not. There's talk of the Supreme Leader Khamenei fleeing to Moscow. I'm not sure we've reached that point.
Yes.
There is still a base of support for the regime. It has big military power. I suspect that if it wanted to fight back even more and attack foreigners, because of course it's an imperial power, I'm sure it could do that too. We're now joined by the brilliant actor and comedian, the star of The Mummy, Gladiator, and James Bond's The World Is Not Enough, Omid Djalili, who was born in London to Iranian Baha'i parents who emigrated from Tehran in 1958. Omid, thank you for joining us. You've been right across this on social media, despite Tehran imposing a social media ban within the country. What's it been like watching this from afar as a British Iranian?
Well, there are a lot of Iranians right now who are all sleep deprived. We're all on our phones. We're on the Telegram channels. We're on the Instagram channels. We're on Instagram Lives with Iranian television networks, trying to get as much information as we can. When I first saw this unfold, it started off as the bazaris, which means people who own bazaars. And we were very well aware the economy is crashing. The Iranian economy is crashing. This is a regime that spends so much money. They've got millions and trillions of dollars, but some cities don't even have clean water, electricity. They don't even have clean air. So we knew something was afoot. And when the bazaris closed, they closed the shops because inflation was so... You couldn't... literally, to get a kebab and rice, which would have been the equivalent of like £2.50, is suddenly £15.50. And so no one can afford anything. So when they shut the things down, then there's going to be something going on. So I watched it. There were protests. And I think the first thing I saw, which really shocked me, was the Guardian newspaper. The first thing they put out on the 29th of December, this is after a couple of days of protests, the first thing they did was an opinion piece by Abbas Araghchi, the Islamic regime foreign minister. They just gave a whole opinion piece. So I called them out and I said, this is ridiculous. And then I saw BBC News saying, well, this is BBC Verify. We've got this thing about some things are false, some things are not. And I had a trauma memory as an Iranian, because during the Women Life Freedom protests, BBC Verify, and one of the people working there had just put on his own Twitter account, said, don't worry, they're not going to stop screaming about execution, stop screaming that there's going to be a crackdown. And I said to him, you're the bloke at the back of a plane when it's heading nose to the ground. You're the one shouting, stop screaming, we haven't hit the ground yet. And I just said, this is ridiculous. So I saw there seemed to be a media blackout. And then I could see the protests growing and growing. So I started tweeting about it, and people started noticing I was tweeting about it. So it's something because it's not Britain, it's not the West, and people switch off. They think it's crazy Middle Eastern people, and it doesn't make any difference to our lives. But actually, we're going to be doing a big press tour with a TV series that I've got on ITV called Betrayal, which is about the real life British spies who are thwarting terrorist attacks, 70 of which were from the Islamic regime of Iran. So it does affect us here. Whatever happens in the Middle East, it affects us here. So I'm very concerned, and I'm watching also as a British person who is concerned that if this isn't resolved, it's going to affect us here.
Omid, we've seen a lot of anti-regime protests in recent years, particularly over the last decade. We've seen women take part in uprisings. We've also seen the sort of social media generation understand that there's strength in numbers. Why do you think that these protests are different and might actually enforce regime change? Because it does feel like a case of if it's not now, then never.
Yeah, every time we see when there's a crackdown, I mean, look, I'll give you an example even yesterday, that there are reports of anywhere between 192 and 500, some reports saying 2,000 people have been killed, and yet all we see is more and more people joining the protests. And there's a feeling that people are at that point, and I've seen videos of people rushing towards the security forces being shot at. And you think, my goodness, how brave are these people? But then again, you see they're in the state where their money means nothing. They're trying to win the hearts and minds of the people killing them, saying, look, our money is the same worthlessness as yours. And there is a feeling that it's better to, I don't want to say this, it's a very terrible thing, but the feeling is that people are at that point where they say it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. And I think we're looking at people who are on their knees, which is why we're seeing unprecedented amounts of bravery, courage, and actually organization now. They're not going to stop. These demonstrations are not, I can tell you that right now, they're not going to stop.
Omid, with its vast reserves of oil, this ought to be a very rich country. Where has all that money gone?
That's a very loaded question. I mean, if you look at, I did the Saudi Arabian Riyadh Comedy Festival recently to so much criticism, and people say, what are you doing? But you're looking at a culture that is speed running towards modernity. There are four theocracies in the world. One is Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, the Islamic regime of Iran, and the Catholic Church in the Vatican. Now, it's very interesting. Last year, actually in 2024, the Pope met about 103 comedians. And then the Saudis said, look, he met them, but we're platforming them because we're speed running towards modernity. And someone said to me, how can you be there when you're fighting or criticizing the Islamic regime? And I said, if the Islamic regime had a comedy festival in Tehran and pigs were flying, I'd be on the first pig out there. That's the point. Because this regime is not spending money on its own people. Majority of the money is spent towards international terrorism, funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the people of Iran have had enough. This is one of the biggest oil-rich countries we have ever seen. And the thing is, they buddied up with Venezuela. This is something people didn't know. I saw Tom Tugendhat on with Andrew Marr, and Andrew Marr had no idea when he was saying, why isn't Trump helping out? And he said, they are. Trump is. By taking out Maduro, he's helping the people of Iran. He goes, wait, sorry, what's the connection? Which was a kind of total dereliction of his duties. He should really know that Iran and Venezuela are completely connected. Iran is providing so much for the Venezuelan economy because with the idea that they'll buddy up because Venezuela has tremendous amounts of of crude oil, and so does Iran. So they were buddying up, and that's been cut off. So these mullahs we believe the regime is coming to an end. They were going to be leaving for Venezuela, but that's not happening right now. But the people of Iran do deserve to have awareness about what's going on. And this is an unfolding story of one of the most remarkable groups of people fight. And it's, by the way, it's not freedom, this is not a kind of romantic idea of freedom. Oh, they'll be so happy. And no, this is a group of people. I'm a Baha'i. The Baha'is were a persecuted minority. They used to execute Baha'is. And I have friends and family who their parents were just taken off, shot in the head, body thrown into a ditch. And they said, if you want the body, you've got to pay this amount of money. And in the invoice, they charge you for the bullets that they've used to kill the loved ones. We're talking about, and by the way, it's very important to say, this is a regime that has spent money because it's nothing to do with Islam. It's very important that we make this decision. This is not an anti-Islamic demonstration. They are having a go at Muslim and Islamic fundamentalists and fanatics. It's a distortion of that faith. All of my Muslim friends are saying, when you go on these shows, please make that distinction. There is a difference between ordinary Muslims and Islam and what we're seeing in Iran. And that is a thing they're trying to dismantle.
You've mentioned the sort of complicit silence of some of the so-called liberal, progressive intelligentsia. What's your analysis of Keir Starmer's handling of this? Donald Trump's rhetoric has been far tougher. Has our own Prime Minister appeared to lack courage on this issue?
It's not even so much Keir Starmer. We don't want to politicize this, but I think there's a general feeling here. There was this thing, I had a go at a lot of my liberal friends saying, look, you were supporting the women of Iran when it's woman life freedom. But now it seems that because the Islamic regime stood up to Israel and fired missiles at them, it's like as if the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So a lot of British people say, oh dear, I don't think we can criticize the Islamic regime because isn't that Islamophobic? Isn't that we might be seen as pro-Israel? You can be totally for Palestinian rights and also support the people of Iran. There is absolutely no distinction because it's human rights. This is what it's about. So frankly, I've seen online some people writing these articles from what does the Iranian left say? Oh, well, it's going to be all terrible. It's just going to go the way of Syria and go the way of Afghanistan. If you don't have anything positive to say and support the people who are literally being killed on the streets of Iran right now, I honestly think you should just keep quiet. And I think this is the one thing that I see that is the people of Iran not interested in our culture wars. No one gives a damn about culture wars when you're being shot fighting for freedom. So my particular thing is, if you've got nothing to say to support the people and to call out, crimes against humanity, then shut the hell up.
I mean, we haven't proscribed the IRGC in this country. I mean, that's not happened under successive governments. Just to hammer home that point, just about our Prime Minister, some are arguing that his rhetoric should be tougher in support of the protesters, and not least, as Tim and I referenced earlier, the brave chap who climbed on the walls of the Iranian embassy in the UK and swapped those flags over. I mean, goodness me.
Spider-Man. It was amazing. We thought he was incredible. It was just so funny seeing the British police chase after him as well. Look, at the end of the day, no one knows what's going on. Nothing is black and white. There are things going on. I know in the former, when we were really pushing for the IRGC to be prescribed on the terrorist list, it was made very clear to me that there's a reason why that's not happening. It's basically to keep the British embassy open. And they've been prescribed by Canada. They've been prescribed by America. The only kind of intel we can get is from the British embassy. So that there's a reason why it's not doing that, and that's not even that's common knowledge now. That the British embassy is probably one of the few Western embassies that are in Iran right now. Quite funnily, on Bobby Sands Street as well. They changed the name to Bobby Sands Street because there's always been a connection there with the Islamic regime, with anyone who seems to be fighting. They try and make out they're all freedom fighters. So I don't blame Keir Starmer. I think he's doing what he has to do. But I think eventually, as the regime is being isolated, the Turkish government have come out against the Islamic regime. But at the end of the day, I'm more interested in the people of Iran, and I'm really interested in them seeing this through to the end. And hopefully, being literally no more bloodshed. That's what nobody wants. And I think by raising awareness and putting pressure on this regime, we need to stop the bloodshed, and they need to go. I mean, that is it's and you know, these regimes are at their most dangerous when they're tottering on the edge. And I'll finish with this: is that the bazaars which are closed, there's a national strike there, and there was tannoys saying, begging them to open, saying, please open the shops. We need to stop these protests. And people went around weren't giving a blind bit of notice. Yesterday, the Iranian security forces firebombed all the shops in Rasht, a city in Iran, and they blamed it on protesters. And basically, there is a narrative. It's a scorched earth narrative that if we're going to go, which looks like we are, we're going to leave the people of Iran nothing but a barren wasteland. And that is the mentality we're looking at. That is the mentality and the ideology that they were trying to export. And I always said this, the way we were dealing with that regime was with sanctions. And if you give sanctions, you're expecting behavioral change. But I always say, there's no behavioral change here. It's a bit like, it's a very British thing. It's a bit like being attacked by a bunch of zombies and then trying to politely ask them if they would consider a vegan diet. See, that is the amount of change we're expecting. So I think at the end of the day, this is coming to an end. If there's a way the West can intervene in some way, I know Barack Obama was very upset. He had a chance to do that in the Green Movement in 2009, and he didn't do it. And he's come out publicly and he says, I really regret that. But I think that this is last chance saloon. And I think for basically 87 million people who basically feel really surplus to requirement, you know, I think that it's time to step up and save these people and give them what they want, which is freedom.
Do you think that the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, will be involved in whatever comes next? Is he a serious player in all of this, or is the West sort of projecting a fantasy onto him?
He's very much a serious player. I mean, they're putting his voice on tannoys all over cities, asking people, the security forces, that if they ever want to join the people, to scan a QR code on a television program. And so I was tweeting that the revolution would be televised with QR codes, which is amazing. Whatever he is, he's someone who represents a concept. He represents national unity. He himself has said he doesn't want to form a monarchy. He wants to simply transition the country into a democratically elected secular government. There might be the possibility, people seem to be calling for a monarchy. And if there is a monarchy, it definitely will be a constitutional monarchy, like in Britain, alongside a secular government. But all the people know, the people are chanting his name. Of the 1,200 videos I've watched of protests, I would say about 900 of them, they're all saying, long live the king, Pahlavi will return. So he's the only kind of hope people have who will at least get the people who are the leaders of that country in a secular way are all in the prisons. So you open up the prisons, people come out, let them recover a bit, and then maybe whoever wants to run for government, they can campaign and they'll be democratically. But it's a legitimate worry, though. It's a legitimate worry that the country will go the way of Syria and, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan. But I have been very buoyed and hopeful with many videos I see from people inside Iran saying, hey, we've got this. Don't worry about it. The people on the streets, more and more each day. There are things I'm seeing I've never seen. People with wheelchairs. People are taking their children out in the streets. The numbers are getting bigger and bigger. They're saying, leave it to us. Don't tell us what to do. We will deal with this. We don't need foreign intervention. We just need to be left alone to do it our way. And I think that is, what else can you say but support that?
Omid Djalili, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Tea.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.